If you love classic cars, then Donald loves you. 354 cubic inches, 455 horsepower, in a really light 1950s English racing roadster. Sounds like a recipe for a nice easy drive in the country. This is an Allard J2X, and Allards have always had a reputation for being a handful, and this is the car that made that reputation. You can just imagine the hairy-chested heroes that manhandled these cars around tracks like Watkins Glen. It's an extraordinary experience, and driving one of these cars, which I've only done a few times before, is always a thrill. You get the idea of what cowboys feel like when you're riding a horse that would just as soon hurl you off and go running off into the distance by itself as to accompany you across the countryside. Sidney Allard had a brilliant idea for combining the traditional English roadster special with honking American power. The perfect recipe for bringing the character of the traditional English racing special to a whole new audience, the American sports car and racing driver. And the way he did that was to take this chassis and add to it your choice of engine. The bigger and more powerful, the better. Usually Cadillac V8s, sometimes Chrysler Hemis, like the one in this car. They offered something that a lot of the other English and Italian sports cars at the time couldn't offer, which was brute force. Now, you had to have a lot of confidence to handle that brute force in any usable way, but when you could and did, it was amazingly rewarding, and you could just run away from the rest of the field. The funny thing about this Allard, and I have to modulate my voice and use all that practice I've had in singing to talk about this right now, is that as loud and brutish as the car sounds, and the concept of this big, heavy V8 engine in a light chassis, the car itself feels very light. And perhaps that's one of the things that makes this car so interesting to drive. Because at low speed, you think you can barely turn the steering wheel. As you get going a little faster, and not going very fast, the steering lightens up dramatically. So you really have the feeling of a sports car that you can really place very well on the track. These country roads we're driving on right now are reminiscent of nothing less than the Targa Florio, so I can imagine what it must have been like to drive one of these on a purpose-built track. Not a lot of suspension travel, but a lot of glorious sound, and the car that really rewards what it is that you're doing. It's no wonder the people that love these cars really love them, and the people that don't like them at all. When you drive an Allard, you have to have a great deal of respect for it. But that respect is rewarded. This is ridiculous, and it's so much fun. Just listen to that exhaust. axle hop, and we're through the turns and up the hill. Just great. It's different experiences like this that make being a car enthusiast so rewarding. I'm one of the luckiest sons of guns on the entire planet, and I know it. I'm going to now get out of this car and go and watch as many old racing videos with Allard as I can find. And just live for just a moment in the shadow of the heroes who drove these cars. In anger, in period, with joy. Woo! Ride 'em, cowboy! There are some characteristics of sports racing cars that are really important to have a true sporting experience. And an Allard, whether old or new, gives you all that and more. Driving an early Allard J2X, a beast of a car if ever one was created, Sidney Allard's vision of a typical British racing special with a ridiculously powerful American V8 engine. While Sidney Allard's company lasted 12 years, it has been revived. Montrealer Roger Allard, or Allard perhaps, no relation to Sidney, felt the need to reinvent Sidney's invention for the modern age. And he's done it in a way that is acknowledged to be quite successful and quite faithful. I'm driving a 2019 Allard J2X Mark III. Sidney revived the Mark with the Mark II, and he made various improvements to this Mark III model, and he offers it as Sidney Allard did with a choice of power plants. This one is a GM LS engine, an LS1, putting out prodigious horsepower. Not sure the exact number, but one of the things that Roger Allard has done, which is quite astonishing, is to take away some of the more insane characteristics of the original Allard, which is that very narrow chassis and very darty handling and a very active rear end, and replace it with something that's just slightly more civilized, but not too civilized so that you don't forget that you're driving an Allard. This car has quite a bit more horsepower than the original, although the one I drove was pushing 350, 400 horsepower. This one certainly has that. The cabin is a bit wider, so it's much more comfortable. The seats are certainly more comfortable. It's actually got a heater, although on this cold day, it's not really doing a lot. And it is clear that the fun to be had with a powerful car and a very light chassis, and for modern times, fairly thin tires, although compared to an original Allard, these are very wide boots indeed. What this Allard does have that it shares with its older relative is a certain sense of being alive. The front end is very light, almost darty, so you get that rear wheel steering effect that is so prevalent in the vintage Allard. And yet the suspension, of course, is much more capable. You're not going to get that same kind of a bounce that you get in the earlier car. The earlier car is, frankly, terrifying to drive. This one is only frightening to drive, but frightening in a good way. You know, it's certainly a great summer day tourer. Be fun, and a very active and demanding track day companion. For a December day, I feel that the adventure of our British friends is very much in evidence here. I should probably have tied my scarf just a bit tighter. And although my glasses let me see and do cover my eyes, this is a car for goggles. I feel my face being slightly peppered with the dust and a little bit of sand on the road. But it is fairly ridiculous fun. The pedals are also set up perfectly for heel and towing. You can actually feel the car start to drift a bit, which is very Allard. There's even a bit of notchiness in the steering, that you turn the wheel, you get an instant response, then a bit of a dead space, then a more instant response, much as you did in the vintage car. And that certainly keeps you alive. It's a fairly windy day today as well, so the car is darting a bit with the wind, all of which is terribly entertaining. This is a car that delivers a very, very vintage driving experience with all the mod cons. I've made this more extreme motoring than it needs to be by driving it on a winter day, but just the fact that you can do this is a tribute to what Roger Allard has achieved with this car. And these cars are all built to order, very carefully built, and it's a very special club you belong to, because the Allard Register actually acknowledges these cars and puts them into the register as genuinely the product just like the original Allard cars. So that's also a very exciting prospect for an owner, to be able to participate with other Allard owners in events recognized by the Allard historians. It's a tribute to what Roger Allard has accomplished. I have to be careful about smiling. I might lose something in my teeth. But it's great to know that, especially today with the latest ruling from the government, the small manufacturers can now deliver complete cars. It's really changed the scene for manufacturers like Allard. And Allard can now deliver a complete car to you, which is terrific, that you don't have to go through the middleman of a shop to install your engine. And I'm sure that the folks at Allard really appreciate being able to deliver a completed product to fit the specifications of their customers. This is a blast. It's old time and new time all together. And just like the originals, not for the faint-hearted. This is for a true automotive adventurer. You still can find automotive adventures in 2023.